This is the video for History of Rock and Roll, Wednesday, April 8th. For today's session, you're going to need this document. This is the History of Rock and Roll, Unit 5, early 1970s social and political history. So you might want to get this handy. I'll pause the video for a second and then we'll start in. So we're going to do a quick review study of the early 1970s history. And I'm going to try to keep it within 5 minutes. These videos have a maximum length of 5 minutes. So hopefully I can do that. If not, I may go into a second video. So we're going to break this down into 5 sections. The 5 sections are Section 1, history of rock and roll music, some of the events that actually took place in rock and roll, such as the breakup of the Beatles and some of the deaths of Jimi Hendrix and some of the early rockers. So that's Section 1. Section 2 will be the political history of the early 1970s. Section 3 will be some economic history of the early 1970s. Section 4, social history. And Section 5 will be pop culture, the me decade, and that'll be our 5 sections. So you might want to get your notes kind of set up and be thinking in terms of these 5 sections. Okay, Section 1. You will find on page 1 of the notes at the very top some discussion of the breakup of the Beatles. On the bottom, you'll also find some discussion of the deaths, the unfortunate deaths of 4 of the great rock and rollers of the late 60s, including Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison of the Doors, and Jimi Hendrix, who coincidentally all died at the age of 27. So what you should do here is pause the video. If you'd like to, go onto the internet, do a couple searches, maybe study a little bit about the breakup of the Beatles, which was in 1970, as well as the unfortunate death of these 4 rock and rollers, and look at your notes, spend a little bit of time on that. I'll pause the video and then we'll go on to Section 2. Okay, Section 2, the political history of the early 1970s. As you look through your notes, there are 3 main events that you're going to want to take a look at and study. Those 3 events were the end of the Vietnam War. The second one was President Nixon's normalization of relations with China, which was a really big deal back in those days. And then the last will be the Watergate scandal, which was the end of the Nixon presidency. So if you'd like, look over your notes on this. And then also, if you want to take a few minutes and get onto the internet, maybe look at a couple of videos or, quick little documentaries about these 3 political events. You'll find lots of things on the internet, and I'll pause the video. Just a reminder that the answer keys are also posted to Google Classroom in case you need some help there. Let's talk about the 3rd section of 1970s history, or early 1970s social political history. That's going to be a little bit of economic history. You'll find an entry in your notes about the OPEC oil embargo. And that was a really tough time for Americans and American consumers. Gasoline supplies were severely limited. And that was because of the OPEC organization, made up mostly of Arab countries in the Middle East, who produced a lot of oil, who cut the supply of oil to the United States in retaliation for America's support of Israel. So you want to read about that. Again, get onto the internet. Also, maybe take a look at the issue of inflation. For many people in the 1970s, prices really went up for food, gas, all sorts of things. And those presented a lot of challenges. So I'll pause the video here.